All right, let's talk about two strategies to retire at 55. I've got Jack and Cindy, and they're wanting to retire at 55 years old, and they're asking, how can we retire at 55? That's what I want to go through today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I want to show you multiple different strategies on how you can retire at 55. And I want to talk about the rule of 55 and some of the misnomers and questions that I have gotten when it comes to the rule of 55. We're going to do strategies on the board, and we're going to do strategies in the software. So hang on through the entire video so you can get this comprehensive how you can retire at 55. All right, so the first strategy I want to look at is retiring at 55, no part-time work, no pensions, no other income, just investments and Social Security. So let's get some of the demographics for Jack and Cindy. So we've got Jack and Cindy. They're 55 and 53 years old. So Jack has been the primary worker. Cindy is the one who raised the children. She stayed home. She has enough Social Security credits, but basically when they started having children, she stayed home as a homemaker. Now, he has $1 million in his current 401k. It's right at $1 million. They have $50,000 in annual expenses, though that's how much they need to spend every year. His Social Security at 67 would be $3,000 a month. And because Cindy doesn't have a long work history, even though she has qualified for Social Security, we're going to need to use a spousal Social Security benefit at 67 for Cindy. We'll get into Social Security here in just a second. But what I want to talk about first is the rule of 55. Because Jack is under the age of 59 and a half. If you're under the age of 59 and a half and you have a 401k, an IRA, a TSP, a 403b, any kind of qualified retirement account, the IRS says, hey, you're not allowed to use that for retirement income without incurring a 10% penalty plus taxes. But if you have a 401k, you can use the rule of 55. Now, what is the rule of 55? The rule of 55 says if you are 55 years or older in the year that you retire, you get terminated, or you leave your current job, you can use your current 401k for retirement income without paying a 10% penalty. Now, you still pay taxes on your distributions, but you do not pay a penalty. Now, let me give you some caveats. Not all 401k providers allow this. Make sure you talk with your plan administrator, because some 401k plan admins will say, hey, you can use the rule of 55, but you can only take one distribution of a year out of your 401k, or you can only take a quarterly distribution, or you can only take a distribution twice a year from your 401k. So you want to make sure you understand your specific plan rules before you start putting some of this plan into practice. And listen, if you want to talk to me, go to the description below and we can go through the options for you with the rule of 55. Now, some of the things you want to understand about the rule of 55. It must be your current 401k. So if you have old 401ks at previous jobs, the rule of 55 does not apply. Now, a secret is you can do what they call a reverse rollover, meaning take those previous 401ks, roll them into your current 401k before you retire or terminate or leave your job. And now those old 401ks or IRAs are a part of your current 401k. So you can use the rule of 55. You're welcome for that information. So let's look at Jack and Cindy, because they're going to use the rule of 55. They've got $1 million. They've got $50,000 in expenses. They're saying, hey, can we retire? So let's look at this. Jack's 55 years old. That's who we're going to use for the ages here. We've got $1 million in our 401k. Now, there's a couple things that we need to be clear on. This is the board. This is our foundation to our retirement plan. Once we go from the board, we go into the software. The software is going to start taking in a lot more variables than I can put on the board. But if it works on the board, Then we move into the software, the Your Financial EKG, to get a comprehensive plan that includes taxes, market returns, sequence of return risk. When's the optimal time for you to claim Social Security? What about inflation? What about everything? Long-term care, health insurance, Medicare cost, IRMA taxes, everything that goes into a comprehensive retirement plan. But we've got to get it right on the board first, because if it doesn't work on the board, it ain't going to work in the software. I call this the rock, right? Jesus told the story, the man who built his house on the rock. When the storms of life came, his house stood. This is our rock. We want to retire on confident knowledge. So we're starting with the board. That's our foundation. Then we're moving to the walls and the roof, maybe a nice fireplace, whatever you want in your financial plan. So we've got Jack. He's 55 years old. We have $1 million inside of his 401k. So we're going to use the rule of 55 on this 401k money. Now, we're going to assume on his expenses, which are $50,000 a year, we're going to assume a 3% inflation rate. And we're also going to assume a 5% rate of return on his money. Now, the 401k money is still invested. Okay, now it doesn't mean it's invested in the S&P 500 and it's super aggressive. It just means it's invested. It's earning something. So we're going to assume a 5% rate of return, which is pretty low compared to the overall market. Now, when we do the comprehensive financial plan, the Your Financial EKG, we take into account many different rates of return. We want to look at 4%, 5%, 3%, and we put all those into a strategy. But for the board, we're going to look at 5%. We're also going to look at 3% inflation. Now, the reason we're going to do 3% inflation is because that is the 109-year average for inflation. Now, I realize that inflation might be higher when you're watching this video, but we're going to use 3% because we're looking at a long-term average. If I put 7% there or 6% or 8%, that would kill this plan because inflation's not going to run at that for 30 years. We're going to use 3% as a nice round number. Okay. So from 55 to 67, we're going to need $50,000 a year plus inflation out of our $1 million. You got that? So that's 12 years of retirement income. Keep in mind, when you're thinking about retiring early, there's kind of the like who, what, when, where, how of retiring early. This is a when question. Like, when are we going to retire early? They want to retire at 55. So now we have to think about, when's our retirement income from Social Security going to start? Well, if it's going to start at 67, that's 12 years of retirement income coming out of our investments. So we've really got to calculate that in, because you might have something like sequence of return risk. Sequence of return risk is essentially, you go into retirement, you retire at 55, and the market goes down right away. Boom, goes down 10%. You still need $50,000 in retirement income. You take that out of your investments, but your $1 million is now down $150,000 because the market went down 10 or 15%. So not only did you take 50 out, but you're down $100,000 or $150,000. That's sequence of return risk. And so we've got to be acutely aware of that, especially if we're retiring early. So from 55 to 67, our $1 million goes to $776,177, earning 5%, taking $50,000 a year with 3% inflation. So we're down, what is that, $225,000 in that time frame. Now, we're going to claim Social Security at 67. I told you we're going to talk about Social Security a little bit. The reason we're going to claim at 67 is for Jack, it's the most optimal time. Now, when we get into the software, we can look at 62, 63, 64, 70. We can look at all the different ages. But because Cindy doesn't have a long work history, her Social Security is very low, so we need a spousal benefit. So we want to get Jack to 67 to get his full retirement benefit, and we want to get Cindy to 67 so that she can claim half of his full retirement benefit. So the reason we're going to claim at 67 is because Jack's going to get his 100% full retirement benefit. If Jack were to claim Social Security at 62, he would get 70% of his full retirement benefit. If he claims at 70, he would get 124% of his full retirement benefit. I call that an overachiever, a broccoli eater. Now, doesn't matter if you claim at 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, or 70. You just need to pick the time that best fits your individual plan. I get so many comments and people say, oh, I'm claiming at 62 because if I die early, I'm not going to get my money back. So what? Pick a time that best fits you. If claiming at 62 doesn't make the most sense, don't do it. If you're still working, don't claim at 62. If you need the money and it makes sense for your individual plan, do it. But don't make a decision just based on break-even points and I got to get my money because I paid in the system. No, no, no. When you're 85, 86, 87, you want to make sure that you claim at the right time because nobody knows when their checkout date is. Last time I checked, God did not tell me when I'm going to die. Now, he might tell me when I'm going to be raptured, but he didn't tell me when I'm going to die, all right? Well, he actually didn't tell me that either. So at 67, we've got $776,177. Now, again, we're assuming a 3% inflation rate, and we're assuming a 5% rate of return. The difference now is our $50,000 a year in expenses, which is like $4,166 a month, has grown to $6,162 in expenses, right? You see that? That's at 3% inflation over 12 years. That's a big deal, right? What's the cost of a Coke today versus the cost of Coke back in the day? I mean, I used to go to the RC Cola machine down there in Kentucky and pull it out for a nickel or a quarter. It's like, how much is an RC Cola today? Do they even have RC Cola today? How much is a Coca-Cola today? A 20 ounce? Or I used to go to my truck, get the change out of my truck, go into the gas station, get a 20 ounce vanilla Coke. I think I have to use a credit card today for a Coke. So that's inflation. You see that? Now, Jack's Social Security is kicking on at 67, okay? Just Jack's. Cindy's 2 years younger than him, so we got to wait for Cindy's. So at 67, now we need $3,162 out of our 776. So from 67 to 77, we actually grow to 809,157. So we've kind of come up, what's that, $34,000 from here to there. So now we're in a better place. Now keep in mind, in this range, Jack's Social Security kicks on and Cindy's Social Security kicks on. Okay, that's included in that figure right there. So that's why we're able to grow, because we've got two forms of guaranteed income coming in, 67 to 77. Now they're out of money at 97 and 94. This is a really good plan. This is really good. Late 90s, they're running out of spendable assets. Now they still have Social Security. They still have their home that's paid off. So we have other assets that we can use if we needed to for long-term care or for extending our retirement income. And again, we're running this at a 5% rate of return. At the time of this recording, you could get a 5% CD. So what if they earn 6 or 7% in a year? What if they average a little higher than 5%? I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying that's guaranteed. But if they do, it's going to make these numbers last a lot longer. All right? So when I showed this to Jack, he liked it. He felt pretty good about it. But Cindy, she didn't like running out of money. She has longevity in her family, her genes, her grandma, her mom. Our mom's still living. Grandma died in the late 90s. And so she's saying, hey, Jack, I don't think I like running out of money at 94. Can we do another strategy? So let's look at that right now. All right, let's look at a strategy to retire at 55. Now, we're going to put into place a couple different strategies. It's going to help you understand, can I retire at 55? Now, we just went over retiring at 55 with $1 million. And we looked at Jack and Cindy, and we determined that they could retire at 55 using the rule of 55. Now, let's look at Jack and Cindy. Let's assume they have less in retirement savings. So we have $800,000 in our 401k. So we're going to use the rule of 55, which says if you retire, you're terminated, you leave your job in the year you turn 55, you can use your current 401k for retirement income without paying a penalty, the 10% dreaded penalty. You still pay taxes, but no penalty. Make sure you check with your 401k admin to make sure they allow the rule of 55. So we've got Jack and Cindy. They have $800,000 saved for retirement, and they want to retire at 55. Now, Jack and Cindy neither have pensions, so all of their retirement income is on their retirement investments. So it's on me, myself, and I, right? No pensions, nothing to fall back on. We have a $50,000 a year expense need. So we have baseline expenses of $50,000 a year that we need money for. And we're going to use a 3% inflation rate for that. So you can see inflation is going to be at 3%. Our rate of return is going to be at 5%. Again, $50,000 is what we need in expenses, which is like $4,166 a month. And we're going to look at part-time work for Jack of $30,000 a year until 65. Now, the reason we're going to work until 65 is because there's some costs that go away when you turn 65. What's that big cost that goes away when you turn 65? Healthcare. So they would be on the exchange at 55 years old. All of this $800,000 is in a 401k. Now, it's not a Roth 401k, it's a traditional 401k. A traditional 401k means that when you pull the money out, you're going to pay taxes on that money. Those taxes are considered ordinary income. So if you take out $50,000, that's $50,000 in ordinary income. With the exchange, the health insurance exchange, your premium payment is determined based on your income. Now, $50,000 with a standard deduction would probably mean they're going to get a subsidy, but taxes are going to go up in 2026, and the subsidy or the exemption or the deductions and all the things that we get right now are also going to go down in 2026. And so because of that, we need to have a plan for healthcare. And so we're going to assume for Jack and Cindy that he's going to work part-time until we get to 65 years old. The part-time work is to help pay for health insurance and also make up some of the expenses because we are retiring at 55 with $800,000, and $50,000 in expenses with inflation over time can really eat into your retirement investments. We're also going to assume a 5% rate of return on this $800,000 in the 401k. So from 55 to 67, that's a 12-year time frame. Okay, so 12 years. Our money goes from $800,000 to $820,000 in the 401k. Now at 59.5, we roll that 401k out, we move it into an IRA. The reason we do that is there's more flexibility inside of an IRA from investment purposes for Jack's 401k. Now your 401k may offer a ton of different options. You might have a brokerage link option within your 401k, meaning you're not limited to just a certain set of funds. Jack isn't like that. Jack is limited to about 12 different mutual funds. So we're going to get that money out at 59.5 so we can go into low cost ETF index funds, right? We want to keep that expense ratio, which is the cost to own a fund, very low. So we got to get it out to do that. So at 67, we're going to have $820,000 in our 401k. Now that's a 12-year time frame. What could happen to the market in 12 years? A lot of roller coaster, which is why within that 12 years, we're going to have this part-time work of $30,000 a year. And we're going to have some inflation on this work, some wage inflation. We're going to put a 1% assumption on this $30,000. That's going to go up 1% every year. Now inflation's going up at 3%, but we're going to assume he's going to get a 1% raise every year at work. Okay. So what we're trying to do here is just kind of fill the gaps in a little bit with his income so that we're not pulling from all of our investments. Now, could he quit working part-time sooner? Yeah, if it makes sense. If the market really does well, if the returns are really well, could he quit? Remember, the main reason is we want to get to 65. We want to get to Medicare because we want to lower that health insurance cost. And Jack's the kind of guy that doesn't like to sit around. He just doesn't want to sit around. He wants to keep working. So 55 to 67, we got $820,000 in our 401k. Now, at 67, we're going to go to 77. So we're going to look at 10 years. We're going to get Jack's Social Security. That's going to turn on here. Okay. Here's our expenses. So they've gone up, right? That's inflation. Okay. Jack's Social Security is going to kick on at $3,000, and we're going to assume a 2.58% COLA increase on Social Security. Now, before you start commenting on his Social Security didn't get a COLA increase from 55 to 67 and yada, yada. I don't put a COLA increase on Social Security until you claim Social Security, and I'll tell you the reason why. In the year 2033, it is, I don't want to say assumed, but the thought process is that Social Security's trust fund is not going to have enough money to pay out 100% of Social Security benefits. It's only projected to pay out 77% of overall benefits, a 23% reduction in Social Security payments. If I don't put a COLA increase until Jack takes Social Security, I'm putting some conservative factors into our planning so that if Social Security does get cut by 23%, we're not sitting there going, oh my gosh, we were projecting out 100% benefits forever. You know, we've got to use some common sense in our planning. I know you're going to comment politicians won't let Social Security have a cut, but there's a lot of things that politicians have done that we didn't think were going to happen. And you look at the current political environment, I doubt anything's going to get done. So we're going to be very conservative in our planning. So at 67, Jack's Social Security turns on. We will have Cindy's Social Security of $1,500 a month. She's going to do a spousal Social Security benefit in here as well. She's 2 years younger. So right here, when Jack's 69 and Cindy's 67, she's going to kick on her spousal benefit. So that's going to be $4,500 a month in Social Security benefit to help cover these expenses. The other reason why we're trying to delay Jack as long as possible is because if Jack were to die early, there's history in his family that he could die early. If he dies early, then we want Cindy to have the largest possible Social Security payment out there because her family history is a long life. And so again, it's not just always, you know, people leave comments like, take Social Security at 62 because you're going to die. And I'm like, well, yeah, we all gonna die, but does it, I don't want to get to 85 and be like, man, I'm really glad I took Social Security at 62. Now I ain't got no money. I got to go, I can't buy beans even. Like, we got to make a Social Security claiming decision based on our individual needs. It's not about break-even points. It's not about making sure you get all the money back that you paid into the system. It's about making a plan that fits your life, your financial details. And the sooner that you realize that, the better plan that you're going to have. And so we've really got to understand when it comes to Social Security, it's not about when can I claim, it's about did I claim at the right time, okay? So at 77, with all these factors, inflation of 3% and a rate of return of 5%, we go from 820 to 881. Now we've stopped working at 67. So now all of our retirement income is Social Security and investments. And essentially, our money lasts to 98 and 95, which is pretty good because I just showed a scenario with $1 million and they were out essentially about the same time, except Jack wasn't working part-time. So what this shows us is, yes, you can retire using the rule of 55 a little earlier. You don't have to have $1 million at 55 to retire. You can have less, but you might have to work a little bit part-time, doing a hobby, a side hustle, Home Depot, whatever you want to do, if you want to leave that high-pressured job that you're in right now. But it can be done. All right. So now let's take these two strategies, let's go into the software and let's put together a Your Financial EKG. All right, now let's look at two strategies to retire at 55. Let's get into the Your Financial EKG software. Let's start factoring in all the different granular things that we can't factor in on the board, like taxes, long-term care. Let's look at IRMA. Let's look at everything that goes into a comprehensive retirement plan. And listen, if you want a financial EKG, go to the description below, click on the link, get on our calendar. Let's talk about how we can put together a Your Financial EKG for you. So here we go. We've got two strategies. We've got our current scenario, which is retire at 55, and we have the rule of 55 with part-time work, okay? So let's look at both of these strategies, and we've got two different asset values on these strategies, and the reason we're doing that is I want to show you retiring at 55 with enough money to not work, and then I want to show you retiring at 55 and having to do some part-time work, just so that you can leave the 40-hour job that's high pressured and maybe do something that's a little bit more relaxing or a side hobby or something. You know, I've got a lot of people who now sell things on eBay and they make a ton of money doing it. All right, so let's look at this first strategy. So this is Jack and Cindy Sanders, and we're asking the question, can I retire at 55 with $1 million? So Jack and Cindy are both retired. Jack's 55 years old, Cindy is 52 years old, okay? Now, Social Security for Jack at 67 will be $3,000 a month. We're looking at a projected COLA of 2.58% on that. Cindy is going to get a spousal benefit at 67 of $1,500 a month. Now, if Jack claims Social Security at 67, he's going to get 100% of his full retirement benefit. If he claims at 62, he would get $2,100, which is 70% of his full retirement benefit. And if he claims at 70, he would get $3,720, which is 124% of his full retirement benefit. Now, for Cindy, her work history is very low, and so she's going to claim a spousal benefit, which is half of Jack's Social Security when he claims at his full retirement age. And the reason we're trying to get as much Social Security benefit as we possibly can is because the longevity for each individual is different. Jack has a history in his family of dying early. Cindy has a history in her family of living longer. So I don't want Cindy to get to 90 and have claimed Social Security at the wrong time and have less money or less income on a monthly basis because we claim Social Security early, trying to get our money quick before Social Security goes bankrupt, instead of putting an actual plan into place when it came to our Social Security. Now, if we look at assets, basically I have two assets. Jack's worked at the same place for a long time. We've got money in the bank at $25,000, and we have a 401k of $1 million. Now we have a home worth $450,000, and we're going to look at a rate of return of about 5%. So the money in the bank is going to earn 2%, and the money in the 401k is going to earn 5%. We're going to look at a 1% increase on the house, and then 5% on any cash flows or forced RMDs that we don't use. So we're looking at about a 4.93% overall rate of return. All right. Now, if we go to expenses, our expenses are $4,166 a month. That's $50,000 a year. And we're looking at inflation of 3.27%. So you can look at inflation history since 1914. We're averaging about 3.27% over the last 109 years. Now, current 10-year at 2.63. So that's like 2022 to 2020 or to 2012. But look at 2012, 1.7, 1.5, 0.8, 0.7, 2, 2, 1, 2, 1. Now in 2021, it's 7. 2022 at 6.5. It's probably going to be somewhere between 4 and 5 in 2023. And so it's going to be higher in the short term, but over the long term, it'll probably fall back to this 3.27% number. Now, keep in mind that sometimes you have inflation on the money. Like I always tell people this, the price of goods and services, the inflation number, you can't always say, oh, that's what it's going to be for my entire retirement. Food and energy are stripped out of the inflation reading by the Fed. So I don't know if you don't go to the grocery store, or maybe you don't put gas in your car. Maybe you live in New York City where you don't have to drive a car, but inflation will probably be a little higher in your retirement than is projected by the Fed. But your spending in retirement, data shows us that our spending in retirement goes down 1.8% per year. Not because you're not having fun, not because you're chronically unhealthy. That does happen to a lot of people. But when you go to Paris, France, you spend the money to do it. Maybe you don't want to go again. Maybe you go to Paris, Texas, or Paris, Kentucky, or I don't know, is there another Paris somewhere out there in the United States? So your spending gradually decreases as you get older. Now, you do have cost as you get older that go up. Healthcare cost inflation is about 7%. We're going to look at that. And so your discretionary spending goes down, but your non-discretionary spending for things like healthcare or medicine, things like that, go up. And so it kind of all balances itself out, but you've really got to understand that from an inflation standpoint. Now, taxes. So we're in Louisiana, and let's look at the year let's go to 2025. So in the year 2025, now keep in mind, taxes are going to change in 2026. Jack and Cindy are in the 12% effective tax rate. So let's look at what that means. We've got $59,000 in income, okay, other income. We don't have any wages. We don't have any qualified contributions, no Social Security, no pensions, no 1099 interest. This is what's coming out of the 401k for retirement income. It's a little higher now because of inflation. It was $50,000 at the beginning. It's $59,311 now. We have a $27,700 deduction. Okay, this is the standard deduction. We're not itemizing. So our taxable income is $31,611. So here's our base, $22,000, then our base tax, that's 10%. Then our over base, okay? So this $31,000, there's $9,600 over base. Here's base, here's over base. So this over base is 12%. This $1,153 is in the 12% bracket. Remember, we have a progressive tax code. The first $22,000 is taxed at 10%. Then 89 or 22 to 89 is taxed at 12. 89 to 190 is taxed at 22. So when you look at this, you can't just say, oh, they're going to be in the 22% bracket or they're going to be in the 12. No. It's a progressive tax code. And that's why you want to have a tax plan. Like, you got to have a tax plan in retirement because taxes are going to eat up your money. It just is what it is, right? And taxes are going to go up. Have you seen our national debt? Think about 1946, okay? In 1946, the GDP to debt ratio was the same place it is today, coming out of World War II. You know what the top tax rate was in 1946? 90. Okay, now I'm not saying that you're going to fall into the 90% tax bracket, but the lowest tax bracket, 1946, 20%. So we're looking at a tax bracket here at 10, 12. 20 was the lowest tax bracket. So take this and say it's 20. We're probably going to get there. So we've got to have a tax plan. So we look at this, our total tax is $3,353. That puts us in an effective rate of 5.65%. So we're paying 5% of our income in taxes. You understand that? And then obviously we have Social Security, we have Louisiana state tax in there. We have not gotten to Social Security taxes yet because we're not claiming Social Security. That's called, we'll get there, and that you'll have some taxable Social Security in there. You have what they call provisional income, which is how they calculate how much you're going to pay in Social Security tax. I don't want to get into all that today. It'd be a 33-hour video. Ain't nobody got time for that. All right, so here we are, 55 and 52. Here's our net monthly expenses, $4,188. So look at this, on a yearly basis, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, my birthday month. Here's our money that has to come out of our investments with inflation. See that? 4,200, 4,211, 42,222, that's a lot of twos, 42.34. So you see how this is going up, right? Because every month inflation's still there. Like the cost of raspberries today at Costco are more expensive than they were last week or last month. Raspberries are my favorite fruit to eat. So I know the cost of raspberries. And maybe yours is oranges, apples, pears, bananas. Leave it in the comment section below. Let me know what your favorite fruit is. I don't know what the cost of that is. But inflation's going to work on a monthly basis. And so we want to calculate it on a monthly basis. We also want to calculate our taxes. Now, Social Security's kicking on at 67 for Jack. Boom, there it is, $3,000. Here's Social Security for Cindy. That's spousal Social Security, 67. So it goes to 47.38. You see, we have the COLA increase for Social Security. And essentially, at 97 and 94, we're out of money. So you see that? Our spendable assets are gone. We still have this house, 686, 476. We could do a HECM, which is a home equity conversion mortgage. Probably would want to do that in our 60s and start building up a line of credit, whatever. And we can pull from that or we can downsize, whatever we want to do. Remember, we're just giving it a 1% rate of return. So the housing market is going to fluctuate, so it could be worth more. You could sell this, go into an independent living facility, whatever. So that's what we've really got to calculate. But this is a really good plan. 97 and 94, we're out of money. Now, obviously, there's things that we have to pay attention to, like long-term care. So they're in Louisiana. Okay, here's Louisiana. Now, the median cost of long-term care today, okay, this is the last time we did the survey in 21, home health, which is what most people do, is $3,718 a month. Okay, so nursing home is $6,000. Home health care is $3,718. So what we can do is we can come up here and we can say, okay, Jack, your current monthly cost for home health is $3,718. We're going to give a cost increase of 3% on healthcare, and we're going to say you need long-term care at 80. What does that do for Cindy? So we scroll down. Here's our assisted living or our home health care coming out, right? 4 years of it. Now, keep in mind, here's Social Security is $65.98. Jack dies, they lose a portion of their Social Security, right? We lose Cindy's. And we drain these assets down to zero. We still have our house, but now we're out of money at 82 instead of 94. And that's why the reverse mortgage or the home equity conversion mortgage makes a lot of sense in their case, because we're trying to protect them and because they're retiring so early. So it's just something we need to factor in. I hope and pray that Jack never has long-term care or assisted living. But the odds are 1 out of 3 individuals will need some sort of full-time care. 2 out of 3 individuals will need what they call informal care. Informal care is where a spouse or a child takes care of a parent or a spouse. It still costs money to do that. It's less expensive, but there's still a cost in that. And this is only saying that Jack goes for 4 years. What if Jack has a chronic disease like Alzheimer's, dementia, something that drags on? And so we really got to have a plan for that. And I don't have pixie dust. I can't say everything's going to work out. In this case, if that's a real concern for them, then maybe he works a little bit longer. He doesn't retire at 55, or he works part-time or whatever. So you've got to always be thinking about the different factors when it comes to your retirement plan. Okay, so last thing I want to look at is the market. So for this, retiring at 55 with $1 million, we've got to look at market returns. So what we're able to do is we're going to put in what they call sequence of return risk. And sequence of return risk is essentially that you retire. See, we retired in 2023, and the market falls for multiple years. Now, I'm not saying it's going to fall 50%. That's a crash. But 10%, 6, and 10, that's a pretty good downturn. Then we're going to have some positive years, and then we're going to have some negative years. And what the software allows us to do is we can do randomized rates of return. We can do negatives first, to get sequence of return risk, or we can take negatives out of the first. And we can say, what happens if you retire and you have low rates of return, but you don't have negatives first? And so we're able to generate these like a Monte Carlo analysis and see individually what it's going to do to the plan. And then what we can also do is do an incremental analysis, and we can say, okay, if you earn 5%, 6.25, and 7.5, what's that going to do to your money? And then what if you earn less than that? So you can see if they earn 2.5% for the rest of their life, they're at 0, or 3.75. But if they earn 5, dang, we got $3.3 million. But what we can do is we regenerate it, right? Look at this. We change the rates of return. It changes this. So this is not perfect science. What we're trying to do is get projections. We're trying to get a strategy that will help us retire at 55. All right, let's look at retiring at 55 with $800,000 in retirement savings, but let's look at some strategies that's going to help elongate your retirement savings. Now, we still have Jack and Cindy. If you've been following along, there's a 4-part series. We got Jack and Cindy. Now, we're going to look at a asset value of $800,000 in his 401k. So he's going to work part-time when he retires at 55. So he's retiring from his main job, but he's going to work part-time, and we're going to assume a $30,000 salary for working part-time. Now, Jack's the kind of guy that doesn't like to sit around, okay? So he wants to continue to work. He's going to put in some time to make at least $30,000 a year, and we're going to assume a 1% projected increase on that. Now, we're going to work from 55 to 65. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want to get Jack to Medicare age. The reason we want to get to Medicare is because from 55 to 65, we have a high health insurance cost. That's going to fall away when we get to Medicare. So Medicare, the cost of your premiums and all that dramatically decrease. And so he wants to work until we can get to Medicare age. Now, Social Security benefits for Jack, $3,000 at 67, and $1,500 a month for Cindy at 67. Now, Cindy's taking a spousal benefit, which means she has enough credits for Social Security, but her Social Security benefit is less than half of Jack's. So we're going to look at a spousal benefit for Cindy. Now, from an asset standpoint, we have $800,000 in 401k and $25,000 in the bank. Their house is worth $450,000, and we're going to assume just a 5% rate of return. So 5% for the 401k, 2% for the bank, and then 1% for the house, and then 5% again on cash flows or forced RMDs. Now, keep in mind, if we wanted to change this, we could change this to 4% and look at what that would do. We could change this to 3%. I've got people that come to, 43%, that'd be really nice. I got some people that come to me and they're like, based on how they're invested, they're going to earn somewhere around 3 to 5%. I get a lot of people who come to me and they have annuities. And I'm like, well, you're not going to earn 5, 6, 7%. You're probably going to earn 3 or 4%. And so we've got to really calculate that in right. And just make sure that, we're putting a good projection in place. We don't want to over project our rates of return. We want to be very conservative. The reason we want to be conservative is I hope and pray the market returns what it has the last 50 years, which is 8% with inflation. Obviously, if you're in retirement, you shouldn't invest like you're 38, right? So I'm 37, I'll turn 38 here in a few months. How I invest is definitely different than how a 55-year-old retired person needs to invest, because I'm getting a paycheck and I have time on my side. If you're 55 years old and you're not getting a paycheck and you've retired, or you're 65, the ability for you to make up what you've lost based on your time horizon has shrunk. And so you don't need to invest like me on a roller coaster. You need to invest on the train tracks, right? I call it the Space Mountain versus the Walt Disney World Railroad. Space Mountain at Disney World, it's in the dark. It's one of my favorite roller coasters. You go in, it's dark. You're on this spaceship, and you essentially, obviously Disney does it really well with the senses. You go on this roller coaster. It's in the dark. You go up and down and you spin around. It's only going like 35 miles an hour at its max. But because it's in the dark, you feel like you're going 100 miles an hour in space. You know you're going to get off. You just don't know when and where that's going to happen. That's like the market. Like, I know I'm getting off. I just don't know when. Am I going to retire at 60, 65, 70? I don't know. But I'm going to be in the dark and I'm going to be going fast. Once you get close to retirement, once you see that landing pad for retirement, you need to walk away from Space Mountain and you need to go to the Walt Disney World Railroad. You need to be more consistent. You need to know you're getting off at Frontierland. You need to know that you're getting off at, Main Street USA. And so I'm not telling you that all your investments need to get boring when you get into retirement and you need to stop making money. No. What I'm saying is you need to have balance. You need to have a retirement investment plan. And that's what we're looking at for Jack and Cindy. So now we go to expenses. Now their expenses are $50,000 a year with inflation 3.27%. Now that's a higher than, so the average is $55,000 in America. If you look at Louisiana, that's high for Louisiana, $50,000 and retired. They just have some higher expenses, and that's okay. Please don't leave a comment and tell me, I can't believe they have $50,000 in expenses and no mortgage and da-da. That's just what they spend, and that's okay. You might spend less. You might live in Kentucky, or you might live in Wyoming, or you might live in Vermont, or you might live in New Mexico, and your spending might be less. That's okay. You aren't everybody, and I ain't everybody. And so when we build out a financial EKG for someone, we have to build out an individualized plan based on their spending, okay? So we've got $4,166. Now let's look at pre-retirement. Because essentially what this is going to show us is we've got our gross monthly salary. This is Jack. He's still working part-time. We've got our expenses of $4,188. And so here's what has to come out of our portfolio. So the retirement portfolio, the 401k, is what we're using for retirement income. Now, before you start commenting and saying, hey, he's going to get a 10% penalty, we're going to use the rule of 55 for Jack's 401k. Now, the rule of 55 is this. If you are 55 years or older and you leave your current job, or you retire from your current job, or you are terminated from your current job, you can use your current 401k from the job that you left in the year that you turned 55 for retirement income without paying a penalty. You pay taxes, but no penalty. Doesn't mean you can't go work somewhere else. It just means the last job that you worked at when you turned 55 and you left your job in the year you turned 55, you can use that 401k. So that's what we're doing. Jack's using his current 401k from the job he left in the year that he turned 55, rule of 55. We're going to work part-time a little bit. That does not negate the rule of 55. So here we go. We're using our 401k. So we've got $825,000, $25,000 of that's in the bank. In the year 2032, we grow to $893,000. We go to retirement. And essentially, we're out at 98 and 95. You can see this. Here's Jack taking Social Security at 67. There's Cindy's Social Security kicking on. And essentially, when we get to 98 and 95, we're out of money. Okay, now let's go up here and let's look at some positives. So let's look at a positive. The rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall, meaning what does this portfolio need to earn to make this red line go away? Well, 5.48%. Remember, we're running it at like 4.9. So we don't have to earn a whole lot more interest to make this money last forever. That's a positive. The amount needed today to avoid a shortfall would mean $106,000. So he would need an influx of $106,000 to make this last forever at the current rate of return. Unless he wins the lottery, I don't think there's any inheritance there. It's going to be a little less. But what you can think about is if you have this house and you downsize and you're able to take some of this money, maybe take $106,000 out of $500,000, then it may work. But again, with the housing market, where you live, things like that, I don't like to assume that, because that's being like, that's pre-2020 thoughts, right? Not post-2020 with where we're at in the housing market. The other thing you want to think about too is what can we do in this scenario to maybe make this money last longer? And Social Security start date is something we can look at. So what I like to do is let the software tell me what's the optimal time to take Social Security, and then we use our human common sense to say, does that fit Jack and Cindy? So the Social Security software says take Social Security at 62. Now what's that going to do? And see, look at this. It actually runs them out of money earlier. See, the software doesn't know what's going on. So now we have to go back, and we also don't want to take Social Security at 62. Why don't we want to take Social Security at 62? Anybody out there know why? Okay, Jack's going to work part-time. He's going to make $30,000 a year. He's retiring or he's going to stop working at 65. When you claim Social Security at 62, if you make over an earnings limit, right now it's about $20,000 a year, Social Security is going to take back $1 for every $2 you earn. So Jack's going to keep working. So as long as Jack's working, making more than $20,000 a year, he needs to delay Social Security. And he also wants to delay Social Security because he wants to get a full spousal benefit for Cindy. So again, this is not a bad plan. We're out at 98 and 95. With the house, we can do a reverse mortgage or a HECM. I mean, what more could you ask for? All right. Well, hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has helped. God bless. Bye-bye.